A Pensacola woman is accused of shooting a man in the back of his head at a national park in Ohio. Federal investigators say the two stayed together at an Airbnb the night before, and the woman allegedly killed him while she was on the way to Michigan to get a tattoo.
I'm on my way to Detroit, but I gotta make a quick stop first. That's what Chelsea Perkins texted her tattoo artist one morning. Sounds innocent enough, right? Just a woman trying to fit everything into her day. Except that stop was to a national park in Ohio. And when she left that park, Matthew Dunmire was dead, shot in the head, left for hikers to find days later. Make it make sense. This is the story of a woman who traveled across state lines with a plan. A woman who picked a man up from a bar, spent the night with him, and then casually mentioned she had a stop to make before her tattoo appointment. That stop cost Matthew his life, and the worst part? She really thought she was going to get away with it. You're watching Shadowed Crimes TV. We tell the stories that need to be told. Domestic violence, toxic relationships, and the lives lost behind closed doors. No sugarcoating, no excuses, just the truth. If you're new here, subscribe and join us as we shed light on shadowed stories. Let's talk about who these people were, because you need to understand how this whole thing unfolded. Chelsea Perkins, 31 years old, living in Pensacola, Florida, mother, military veteran, running an OnlyFans account, married woman. From the outside looking in, she had her life together, you know? But there was something she'd been carrying, something she claimed happened years before. She said Matthew Dunmire raped her, said it happened years earlier, and that trauma stayed with her. She talked about PTSD from past sexual assaults. Heavy stuff, real heavy. Here's the thing though, no charges were ever filed, nothing went through the system, no police reports, no court case, nothing. Now, we know that doesn't always mean something didn't happen. Plenty of survivors don't go through the legal system for all kinds of valid reasons. But what we do know is this: Chelsea held on to that anger, that pain, that accusation. And somewhere along the line, she decided the courts weren't going to give her the justice she wanted. She was going to take it herself. Matthew Dunmire, also 31, living his life in Ohio, working, going out with his coworkers. His family described him as gentle. His uncle later said, "If you ever met him, you know he could not harm a flea." That's who he was to them. Just a regular guy trying to make it through life like everybody else. Now, whether what Chelsea claimed about him was true or not, we'll never really know. Matthew never got his day in court, never got to tell his side, never got a chance to defend himself or be held accountable through the legal system if something did happen, because Chelsea decided she was judge, jury, and executioner. Oh, so now we're taking the law into our own hands? Here's where things start moving. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment situation where emotions got out of control. Girl, this was planned, calculated, thought out. Chelsea was in Florida. Matthew was in Ohio. That's not a quick drive. That's not running into someone at the grocery store. She had to make a decision. She had to get in a car and travel. And she did. She borrowed her husband's car. Yes, her husband's white smart car. Let that sink in for a second. Your spouse's vehicle. The same vehicle that's registered to your household, the same vehicle that can be traced back to you. But she took it anyway. She booked an Airbnb in the Hudson, Ohio area, set everything up nice and neat, made it look like she was just traveling through, maybe visiting, maybe taking a little trip. But she knew Matthew was going to be in that area. She knew where he'd be, and she reached out. Early March 2021. She's in Ohio. She's got her plan. Now she just needs to execute it, and that's exactly what she did. Matthew was out with his coworkers on March 6th. They hit up a bar in Hudson, just a regular night, having drinks, probably talking about work, life, whatever. Normal stuff. Matthew tells his supervisor he's going to meet up with a girl who's in the area for the weekend. His supervisor probably thought, okay, cool, have fun, be safe. You know, the kind of thing you say when your coworkers got plans. His coworkers watched him leave, saw him walk out to a white smart car, saw Chelsea pick him up. They probably thought nothing of it. Maybe they were happy for him. Maybe they teased him a little. Maybe they said, "Have a good night, man." Whatever they said, they had no idea they were watching the last time they'd see Matthew alive. Chelsea drove him back to her Airbnb. They spent the night together. What happened in that Airbnb? We don't know all the details, but what we do know is that Matthew had no idea what was coming. He thought he was spending time with someone who wanted to be with him. He had no clue that this woman had traveled from Florida with one mission. The next morning, March 7th, Chelsea picks up her phone. She's texting her tattoo artist in Detroit. "I'm on the way," she writes, but then she adds something that should have sounded normal but really wasn't. "But I have a stop to make on the way." A stop. That's what she called it. Like she was dropping off dry cleaning, like she was picking up coffee. A stop. But that stop was about to end a man's life. She takes Matthew to Cuyahoga Valley National Park. Beautiful place, peaceful. People go there to hike, to see nature, to get away from everything. But Chelsea, she brought Matthew there for one reason. She pulled out a gun. She shot him in the head, and then she left him. Just left him there like he was nothing, like his life meant nothing. Then she got back in that white smart car, her husband's car, and she drove to Detroit, kept her appointment with the tattoo artist, went on with her day like she hadn't just committed murder. Matthew's body stayed in that park, near Terra Vista Cemetery, a burial ground inside the national park. How symbolic is that? He was left near a cemetery, already dead, waiting to be found. A few days passed. Hikers came through the park. They weren't expecting to find anything except trees and trails, but they found Matthew. Found him with a gunshot wound to the head. Found him where Chelsea left him. And that's when everything started to unravel for her. That's when investigators got involved. That's when the real work began. Like, did she really think this through? Did she really believe she could shoot someone in a national park and just walk away? Federal land means federal investigators. It means resources. It means people who don't stop until they get answers. And they were about to come for her. When those hikers found Matthew's body, they didn't just stumble onto a local crime scene. This was a national park, federal land, which meant this wasn't going to be handled by just any police department. The FBI got involved, federal investigators, and when they get on your trail, they don't stop. They don't get distracted. They follow every single thread until it leads them to you. Matthew's body told them part of the story. Gunshot wound to the head, execution style. This wasn't random. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This wasn't some hiker who got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Someone brought him here specifically. Someone wanted him dead specifically. Now investigators had to figure out who and why. They started piecing together Matthew's last movements, talked to his coworkers, found out he'd been at that bar in Hudson, found out he told his supervisor he was meeting a girl, found out his coworkers watched him leave with someone in a white smart car. Now they had something, a vehicle description, a witness account, a timeline. But who was the woman? They dove into Matthew's phone records, his messages, his calls, started tracking his digital footprint. And that's when Chelsea's name came up. They'd known each other before. They had history. Not good history, according to Chelsea, but history nonetheless. And when investigators dug deeper, they found out Chelsea had been in Ohio that exact weekend. Oh, wow. They got warrants, started pulling records, found out about the Airbnb she'd booked, found out she'd been staying right there in Hudson, the same area where Matthew was last seen alive, the same area where his coworkers watched him get picked up. This wasn't coincidence. This was connection. Then they found the car. That white, smart car his coworkers described. It was registered to Chelsea's husband in Arlington, Virginia. Now they had a direct link, not just some random vehicle, not just some description that could match 1,000 cars, a specific car, tied to a specific person, tied to Chelsea. But investigators needed more than circumstantial evidence. They needed proof. They needed something concrete that put Chelsea at that crime scene. So they went back to the national park, back to where Matthew's body was found. And they started collecting evidence, every little piece, every fiber, every possible trace of DNA. And they found it. Chelsea's DNA was at the crime scene, not just in the general area, on items at the scene, items connected to Matthew's murder. Her genetic material was right there, tying her directly to the place where Matthew died. Let me tell you something. DNA doesn't lie. You can make up stories. You can change your alibi. You can try to explain away everything else, but you can't explain away your DNA being at a murder scene. Then there was the phone. Chelsea's phone. Because here's the thing about phones in 2021. They track everything, every movement, every location, GPS data that shows exactly where you were and when you were there. And Chelsea's phone? It put her at Cuyahoga Valley National Park at the exact same time Matthew was killed. Not near the park, not in the general vicinity, at the park, during the window when Matthew was murdered. Her phone pinged off towers, logged coordinates, created a digital trail that investigators followed step by step, and every step led right back to her. So now they had motive. She'd accused him of rape years earlier. They had opportunity. She was in Ohio that weekend, staying near where he was. They had means. She had access to a weapon. They had witnesses who saw her pick him up. They had DNA at the crime scene. They had GPS data placing her there when he was killed. They had everything. But Chelsea, she'd gone back to Florida, back to Pensacola, back to her life like nothing happened. Like she didn't just take someone's life and dump them in a national park. She was home with her husband, with her kids, going about her day, and for 9 months, she probably thought she got away with it. 9 months. That's how long it took investigators to build their case, to make sure every piece of evidence was solid, to make sure when they moved on her, they had everything they needed. Because this was federal. This was murder on federal land. They couldn't afford mistakes. They couldn't afford gaps. They needed it airtight. And when they were ready, they came for her.
31-year-old Chelsea Perkins is charged with murder. She was arrested Thursday at her home on Breckenridge Drive. She's accused of shooting and killing Matthew Dunmire on March 6th. Hikers found Matthew's body a few days later near Terra Vista Cemetery, a burial ground at the Cuyahoga Valley National Park in Ohio. 4 days before his body was found, the FBI says he was out with coworkers at a bar in Hudson, Ohio. He told his supervisor he was going to meet a girl who was staying in the area for the weekend. A few minutes later, she picked him up from the bar. His coworkers reported seeing her pick him up in a white smart car. That car belonged to Chelsea's husband in Arlington, Virginia. She and Matthew left and went to her Airbnb. The next morning, she texts a tattoo artist in Detroit and says she's on the way, but first, she has a stop to make. That stop was at the national park. Investigators say her DNA was found on items at the crime scene, and her phone's GPS showed she was in the area at the same time as the victim.
December 2021, 9 months after Matthew's body was found, federal agents showed up at Chelsea Perkins' home on Breckenridge Drive in Pensacola, Florida. She wasn't expecting them. Maybe she thought enough time had passed. Maybe she thought she'd covered her tracks well enough. Maybe she thought because nothing happened right away, nothing was going to happen at all. She thought wrong. They arrested her right there, charged her with murder. Not state murder, federal murder. Because Matthew was killed on federal property, which meant federal charges, federal court, federal prison if convicted. This was a whole different level. They took her into custody, transported her to Santa Rosa County Jail, and that's when her whole world came crashing down. Everything she thought she got away with, it was all coming back. Every piece of evidence investigators collected over those 9 months was about to be laid out in front of a judge. Chelsea made her first appearance in federal court. The evidence against her was overwhelming. The DNA, the GPS, the witnesses, the car, the timeline, all of it pointing directly at her. Her lawyers knew what they were looking at. She knew what she was looking at. This wasn't a case they could win at trial, not with everything the prosecution had, so she made a choice. She pleaded guilty, admitted to second-degree murder, said yes, she killed Matthew Dunmire, said yes, she traveled to Ohio and shot him in the head and left him in that national park. But even in admitting it, she tried to frame it a certain way, tried to make it about the rape allegation, about her PTSD, about being a victim who fought back. The prosecutors, they called it what it was, a revenge killing, premeditated murder. She didn't fight back in the moment. She didn't act in self-defense. She planned this, traveled across state lines, lured him to that park, and executed him. The judge sentenced her to 22 and a half years in federal prison. 22 and a half years. She's currently locked up in West Virginia. Won't see freedom until she's in her 50s. Her kids will be grown. Her life, as she knew it, over. But the legal battle didn't end with the prison sentence, because Matthew's family, they wanted restitution. They wanted Chelsea to pay for what she took from them. Not just their son, their nephew, their family member, but his future income, his presence, his life. They filed for restitution, funeral expenses, lost income that Matthew would have earned over his lifetime, travel expenses for family members who had to come from out of state to attend court proceedings. They calculated it all out. The total? Over $900,000. Almost $1 million that Chelsea owed to the Dunmire family. Now you'd think someone who just pleaded guilty to murder would accept the financial consequences, would understand that part of making amends, even though nothing can truly make amends for taking a life, is paying what the court orders you to pay. But Chelsea, she rejected it, fought against it, questioned the amount. She argued that Matthew's living expenses should be subtracted from the total. Like, if he'd still been alive, he would have had rent to pay, groceries to buy, bills to handle. So according to her logic, the family shouldn't get credit for income he would have spent on himself anyway. Is that what we're doing now? You take someone's life and then nickel and dime their family over restitution? The prosecutors fired back. They said Chelsea should not get a windfall from her crime. That ordering anything less than full restitution would basically be rewarding her for killing him. Because think about it. If she gets to subtract his living expenses, she's essentially saying he's worth less dead than alive. And that's exactly what she made happen. She made him dead. Matthew's uncle spoke out, talked about the kind of person Matthew was. Gentle, harmless, someone who wouldn't hurt anyone. He said the sentence wasn't enough, that she got off easy. Because how do you quantify a life? How do you put a number on someone's presence, their future, their potential? You can't. But the family tried. They tried to get something, anything, that acknowledged the magnitude of what was taken from them. The hearing about the restitution happened behind closed doors. Both sides argued their positions. Chelsea's lawyers fighting to reduce what she owed. The prosecution fighting to hold her accountable financially on top of the prison time. And while that played out, the reality remained. Matthew was gone. His family was left with a hole that no amount of money could fill, and Chelsea was in prison, still trying to avoid the full consequences of what she did. Here's what makes this case sit so heavy. We'll never know the full truth. We'll never know what really happened between Chelsea and Matthew years before that night in Ohio. Chelsea says he raped her. Matthew's not here to tell his side. He never got his day in court, never got a chance to be held accountable if what she said was true, never got a chance to clear his name if it wasn't. And that's the problem with taking justice into your own hands. You become the very thing you claim to be fighting against. You become someone who takes choice away, someone who decides who deserves to live and who deserves to die. Chelsea said she was a victim, but then she made Matthew's family victims too, made his coworkers witnesses to his last moments, made those hikers discover something they'll never forget. The restitution battle? That's still playing out. The U.S. Attorney's Office enforces these orders, but realistically, most victims' families never see full payment. Defendants sitting in federal prison don't have money. They can't work regular jobs. They can't earn enough to pay back hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the Dunmire family? They're probably never going to see that $900,000, but they keep fighting for it anyway, because it's the principle. Because it's acknowledgement, because it's something. Chelsea's in federal prison in West Virginia, 22.5 years. She'll be in her 50s when she gets out. Her children will have grown up without her. Her husband, if he's still waiting, will have lived half his life with her behind bars. The woman she was before all this, that woman's gone, and the woman she'll be when she gets out, she'll be a convicted murderer who has to live with what she did for the rest of her life. Matthew's family goes to bed every night knowing their son, their nephew, their loved one isn't coming back. They'll never get another phone call from him, never share another holiday, never see what he could have become. His uncle said it best. He could not harm a flea. That's who they lost. And no amount of restitution, no prison sentence, no guilty plea brings him back. This case raises questions we don't have easy answers for. What do we do when the system fails survivors? How do we handle accusations that never go through legal channels? Where's the line between justice and revenge? And what happens when someone decides they have the right to be judge, jury, and executioner? Chelsea Perkins made a choice. She planned it out. She borrowed her husband's car. She booked an Airbnb. She reached out to Matthew. She picked him up from that bar. She spent the night with him. She took him to that national park. She pulled the trigger. She sent that text about making a stop. She went to her tattoo appointment. She went back to Florida. She tried to move on like it never happened. But it did happen. And now 2 families are destroyed. Matthew's family lost him forever. Chelsea's family lost her to prison. Her kids lost their mother. And all of it Every single piece of this tragedy came from one decision, one moment where she decided that her pain justified taking his life. The case files are closed. The investigation is over. The guilty plea was entered. The sentence was handed down. But the impact, that's gonna last generations. Matthew's family will carry this grief for the rest of their lives. Chelsea's children will grow up knowing what their mother did. And everyone who knew Matthew will always wonder what kind of life he could have lived if he'd made it past that night. Some people will hear this story and sympathize with Chelsea. They'll say if he really did assault her, he got what he deserved. Others will say no matter what happened, murder is never the answer. The truth is probably more complicated than either side wants to admit. But what's not complicated is this. Matthew Dunmire is dead. He died in a national park with a bullet in his head. And the woman who killed him texted her tattoo artist right after like it was just another stop on her to-do list. That's the story of Chelsea Perkins and Matthew Dunmire. A story of accusations never proven, of revenge planned and executed, of two lives ended that night in different ways, one literally, one figuratively, of families left behind to pick up pieces that'll never fit back together the same way, of a legal system trying to put a dollar amount on a life lost, of questions about justice and accountability that don't have easy answers. Make it make sense? You can't, because none of this makes sense. A man is dead, a woman is in prison, families are shattered, and all of it could have been different. All of it could have been handled differently. But it wasn't, and now everyone involved has to live with the consequences. Or in Matthew's case, he doesn't get to live at all. This is Shadowed Crimes TV. If this story got to you, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, share this video, because cases like this, they need to be told, not to glorify what happened, not to take sides, but to show the real cost of revenge, to show what happens when pain turns into rage and rage turns into murder, to show that there are no winners in stories like this, only loss.